Hey everybody, this is Brett Ingram, and this is the optYOUmize podcast. It helps entrepreneurs build their dream business and dream. Today, we're talking with Emily Aborn, small business copywriter, speaker, and podcast host. She's been an entrepreneur for over a decade with experience running brick and mortar and online businesses also. I'm super excited because she's got some amazing insights to share. So with that, welcome, Emily. Thanks a lot for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Brett. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk to you. So, I have a lot of stuff I want to ask you, but can we start off with your personal story? I'm curious, how did you actually start your career? What's your background in terms of, professionally in that regard?
You want to know specifically like copyright how I got to copywriting essentially.
Well, yeah, you could start off with just what you did. Like,
Yeah.
did you set out to do that in the beginning, or did something sort of draw you and lead you to that after you got started with your career?
So I've always been a writer, like since I was truly a little girl. As soon as I could write, I was writing stories and poems and reading the back. I was like fascinated with like the back of the cereal box and like the marketing that they do. Like, but I didn't know why. Okay. So like let's table that because that's like a passion. I ended up going to school for health education because I was also very interested not in like everybody else's health, I'll confess this, but my own health. I was just like, I want to figure out my health. So I went to school for health education. My goal was really to be like a community health educator. I got my degree in community health education and like got certified and all of that stuff. Hit the ground running, working for like health offices and gyms and chiropractors and stuff. And I always found myself in the like, oh, let me write the newsletter or let me do the workshop, but also the marketing for the workshop and let me like promote the workshop. So I always kind of found myself in those roles, but still took me a long, long time to like put two and two together. Um, I kind of kept going on that journey. My husband and I was like determined also to make this health education degree like work as a small business owner, like as an entrepreneur, because I had this entrepreneurial spirit. So we ended up opening a mattress store. And I know it sounds kind of random, but the mattresses, it was like mattresses and home products. And it was really focused on like non toxic products and healthy sleep and things like that. So once again, I'm like, okay, I'm educating people, right, on like how to get better sleep and stuff. Well, the mattress store was lovely and all, but a brick and mortar, a retail, it is just no joke. You do have to be there every single day when you say you're going to be there. It's not really like my favorite thing to like interact with customers all day long and sell things. And it sort of was like, okay, this is not what I thought it was. But I tell you what I did love. I loved the marketing piece of it and like writing the blogs and writing the website stuff. So finally, after 5 years of doing that, we sort of the industry was kind of going by downhill a little bit because of all the bed and box and stuff like that. So we saw the writing on the wall, worked on like kind of liquidating and or selling. Like our goal was really to sell our business. And then I had to figure out what was next for me. And so I sat down with a mentor actually at the time, and she's like, I want you to make a list of everything you really love doing in your business and everything you don't love doing in your business. And what came out of it was like, I love doing all of the marketing and behind the scenes stuff. I don't like the in person being here in the shop stuff. So she helped me kind of like get connected to other entrepreneurs that needed what I was doing. And I literally just started saying yes to whatever people sort of needed in their businesses. And it took a while, like probably 2 years of doing that, like just whatever, to niche down into specifically focusing on content and copy. I share the whole journey to share that like our paths are just, I'm sure you hear this every single episode, but they're just so not linear. And the
Yeah.
field of possibility of like what could happen is so huge, that I think it's so important to remember like you just have to keep taking the next right step because you will get to where you want to be.
Yeah, it's fascinating to me, but I have to tell you, crazy parallels. So I, right out of college, actually started a business, brick and mortar, and we were doing custom configured PCs, and we were assembling them. because that was a hobby of mine. I just loved it. And how I found it was, I had a buddy who was like, "Hey, I need a computer, but I don't want to spend 2 grand to buy one from one of these big, manufacturers." There's these local computer shows that used to go around to like the high school gyms and stuff, where you go with me and see, what parts to buy. So I went with him and I realized, wow, this stuff is really cheap. If you get all this stuff and you can put it together, I mean, I could beat those guys by, 40% price wise. So I got the idea to start this as a business. So I actually did that. My brother was a little bit older, so he wasn't an active partner, but he had a little bit of capital because he had been working. So he was able to front me a little bit to get started. Ended up doing a brick and mortar business. I had 7 employees. We started advertising in the back of magazines because this is pre-internet. So we were doing like PC Magazine, Computer Shopper. We had those ads in the back where it was like call, and so fascinating. But same idea. The overhead is enormous,
Oh
and
my
the
gosh.
margin is so low in that business that you need a lot of capital to buy the equipment. And so it worked really well for a couple of years. And then the problem was, same idea, the market was shifting, and all these big guys, Dell and HP and everybody else, started to figure out the just in time inventory. Because initially, what would happen is I could order stuff at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, have it shipped from California, have it on my doorstep in the morning. And so when the price of memory or computer chips or whatever dropped, I could instantly pass it along to my customers. So we were killing these guys on price. Well, they got smarter and smarter. They started shrinking their warehouses and they started doing more of that. So our margins started to shrink to a point that I said, pretty soon they're going to be selling at our own prices. Who's going to buy from us? We don't have a brand name. So
Mhm.
same idea. I had to transition out of that. But to your other point, and I do find this fascinating as well. It's amazing how non-linear so many people's journeys are. I talk to people and they have 3 or 4 different things they've done throughout their life or career that seem completely disconnected. Yet somehow the thing that they're doing right now borrows from all the pieces of the things they were doing. It's absolutely fascinating to me. But it is so true that as long as you keep taking the right next step, that's more important than the current situation if you don't find yourself in a place where you're happy right now.
Yeah, yeah. I love that. Oh, fun
So
parallel.
very cool. I mean, it's weird. Yeah, it's really, really weird. So, and it was whimsical. Knowing what I know now, I never would have done that. I thought,
Yeah.
oh yeah, you just start a business, it'll be easy, like because I like this kind of stuff. But yeah, no, I didn't love doing the phone calls all day either, or even building the PCs. Once you got to a certain point, you get to an overload, and you're just like, I want to break from this. But so, all right, so that's how you got into all that, and then you started. So, was your entrepreneurial spirit part of you something that just you were sort of born with, and you were always looking for that angle for how you could do something on your own?
I used to, like, no joke, probably by the age of 6, I was like doing the lemonade stands, which is every kid, right? But I had a dog walking service, a gopher service. I did like a pop up, like jewelry and candy store that I would like take all around the neighborhood. I wrote newspapers. Like, yes, it was always, that was always, how can I start my own business? That was the question I was always trying to answer. And I had a really hard time. When you're young, it's hard
Yeah.
to figure it all out. I also didn't have a lot of guidance as far as like finances. So there was always just kind of like that sort of thing hanging over my head. That said, once I got into the business world, I realized like a lot of the number stuff is super, super important and you can't neglect it to kind of go after your passion. So, good lessons to learn. Probably learned them a little too late. But yes, I think it comes on both sides of my family and it is like literally in my DNA.
Oh, that's so funny. Yeah, because in my family, everybody's very traditional. No business owners. I was the only one who is really entrepreneurial that way. My brother a little bit, but he's better off. And is stuck with the sort of the corporate thing long term. But yeah, when I was a kid, I had a couple of paper routes. I mowed lawns, and my friend a couple of houses down, she and I would make chestnut necklaces and try to sell them door to door out of a wagon that we would pull around. And, it's
We
kinda
might be the same person.
I know, right? It's kinda funny. I was always looking for any kinda angle with that. So, I know one of the things that have talked about recently is curiosity marketing. So talk to us about what that is.
Okay, so I think it's fun to talk about how I got into like the whole concept of curiosity marketing. So, I was taking like this SEO course and our goal was to find keywords. So basically we had to write 9 blogs a month. It was a lot. It was like a big assignment. So we had to find keywords that we could turn into 9 different blogs, but it was like the same topic area. And I had a podcast at the time called She Built This. So I actually had 2 podcasts at once. And I had a guest on who was talking about curiosity. And I was like, I wonder, like, I'm now curious. I'm like, I don't know if I was a very curious person when I was a kid. That's what I was kind of thinking about, right? And I'm like, I wonder if I could do blogs that relate somehow to our marketing about curiosity. So, like, that's how it all sparked. Then I find this topic, which is literally called curiosity marketing. It exists. And I started getting really curious about curiosity and how we can bring it into our marketing. So that's like how it happened. It was through that I realized there are actually, or I learned, I should say, that there are actually 4 different types of curious people, and this is fun for the listener to kind of identify which one they are, and also for you, Brett, to do that for yourself too. So, this is not my original concept. This is like all over the internet. So the 4 types are this is the most common one, the fascinated. That's the person that's like they're interested in just a wide range of things, everything from news to chromium to psychological things. So it's kind of a very vast range of things that you're curious in, but you can kind of like go down lots of rabbit holes, right? It's like probably the person that has a lot of tabs open at the top of their computer and they're like all various articles that they want to read. Then there's the empathizer, and this is like just slightly less, but still a significant portion of the population. This is people that are interested in other people. Like, I love hearing your stories. I want to learn what makes you tick. I like knowing your preferences. Like, it's the kind of person that will bring out those question cards, right, at a family function and like figure out what everybody in the room is thinking and feeling. That's me, if in case you were wondering. And then the third one is the problem solver. And this is a person that is mostly focused on like being curious to solve a problem. So we bring in a lot of this as business owners. Like when I was trying to find that curious angle, right? I was looking to solve a problem. So we will do a lot of that in the name of our business, but you will know if you're a problem solver if like the only thing that makes you curious is when you have a problem to solve. That's like how you can identify that you squarely fall into that category. And then there's the avoider, and they're probably not even listening to your podcast because they have a very like low curiosity. They're not like really interested in a lot of things. They're sort of like apathetic, I guess, when it comes to new ideas and information and even learning about themselves. So those are the 4 types, and we kind of do fall into one of those 4 more than the others, but we obviously have a combination of all of them. This said, I think it's helpful to first think about what you are when you're like approaching your marketing, but also think about where your clients and your customers mostly fall in. So, and especially when they are looking for you. So, like for me, I know that I am an empathizer. Like I'm really, really interested in people. However, when my clients are coming to like look to work with me, they're not like wildly interested in me, right? And I know this because that's how a lot of people make buying decisions. They're not like, "Ooh, I want to know your favorite flavor of ice cream," right? They are looking to solve a problem, and that's why they're looking to work with someone like me. So I have to kind of say, "Okay, well, what makes you curious about the way that I'm going to be solving this problem and how can I approach my marketing from that perspective?" So it's a helpful way to frame it so you can remember A, that you think a certain way. Not everybody is thinking that certain way when they're coming to buy something from you. And how can you kind of bridge that gap, right? So we'll start there. I'll take a breath and you can chime in.
Yeah, that's cool. I definitely relate to the first 2 types the most. I think that, I definitely have lots of interests. I don't have a lot of time to pursue them all, but but it does make me curious. But I also, and this is, one of the reasons I started the podcast is because I am fascinated to have an opportunity to talk with people, but I like to do it in this kind of format where it's more in depth. Like I never really enjoyed like conference going that much because I find it to be very superficial.
Yeah.
You shake hands, you get business cards, but everything is so, you know, like packed in and just compact in terms of the time and the amount of ability you have to really connect with people that I just find it difficult. And and so I would come back from conferences or whatever, and I wouldn't really feel confident or comfortable reaching out to people I met because I don't feel like I got to know them that well. With a podcast, what I love about that is, you have somebody you're on having a 45-minute conversation, you know each other. By the end of it, I don't care if it's the first person I ever interviewed. I have no doubt that if I went back to them and reached out to them, they'd remember who I am, right? I remember things about them, and I think that for me was sort of the thing that made it really valuable because the social media side of things where it's all bite size and sort of a micro this and micro that, there's value in it and I get that, but I don't feel like relationship building is quite as easy, right? You have to do it, over time. And so yeah, that is pretty fascinating. So how do we apply those principles to our content, right? So let's say that if I'm creating content for what I'm trying to do, are there particular things that I should be thinking about or looking to do, add or avoid in terms of stuff I'm going to put out there?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the goal with curiosity marketing is really to create that like interest, the desire, the intrigue. And when I say that, I want to be careful. I'm not like trying to create pain points for people. I don't really like pushing buttons on what people are already experiencing as something that's really hard for them and say like, here, let me make it worse for you, right? Let me like feed into that and then I'm going to sell you the solution. That's not what I'm talking about. That's not intrigue, that's pain point marketing.
Yeah.
So I like to create it sort of like, what are the possibilities of what we could create together? That's kind of like where I start. But to do it, to begin with like a do that you can take action on right away, there's two questions you can ask yourself. Number one, who am I speaking to? Like, who is my client? Who needs my message? Who is listening to my podcast? Who am I speaking to? And the more specific I can be in that, the better, because that engages the brain. Like the specificity makes things kind of like a more universal experience. So when you talked about that conference, for example, and you gave those specifics about what you don't like about a conference, a lot of us, that that triggers exactly how we feel about a conference, right? And then I'm like, oh, I can add to that too. Like it's also overstimulating and like just too much information, right? So that very specific example you gave, like stirs up all of our curiosity and the excitement inside of our brain. So being more specific with who you're speaking to is like the very first place I start. And a lot of people, I write for a lot of different industries and they'll start with like, oh yeah, it's anyone who, or it's everyone. And I'm like, okay, let's narrow that down a little bit. You don't need to like put yourself into this tight niche, but let's narrow it down a little. It's not just anyone and everyone, right? I'm writing for a charity right now, and they're so laser focused on the three people that they finance and the initiatives that those people are looking to apply for funding for. It's really helpful because now when an organization goes to their site, they can instantly weed themselves out as a good fit or not a good fit. So starting with, who am I speaking to? The second question to ask yourself, and there's a podcast I love called the Grammar Girl podcast. This is by Mignon Fogarty, and she does this every year. She audits her own content and says, is it interesting? Like, is it boring or is it interesting for other people to listen to? And I love that. And it sounds like it will be painfully, like you have to be painfully honest with yourself. But sometimes I will look at my social media and I'm like, oh, I'm just talking about myself like a lot, or I'm not really sharing anything very interesting. And some of the way you can be clued into it is like, am I excited when I'm writing it, or am I excited when I'm creating it, right? Like when you and I are having this conversation right now, it's exciting. And because we are excited having the conversation, the person on the other side is also going to be like, "Ooh, that's a little more, that's got a little more pep." So that's a good place to start as well. Is what I'm saying actually interesting? Does it light me up? Am I like bored to tears by writing it or doing it? And if I am, what do I need to kind of shift? So that's my first do, is like starting with questions.
Yeah, I think that's really important, and what you say in terms of the social media element of it too. I was talking to somebody who specializes in, helping people with their content, and he said, the number one mistake that people make is obviously you want to be passionate about what you're talking about, but if the audience that you're writing to is yourself,
Yeah.
because you're sort of then you could be missing who you're trying to actually talk to. So if you have to sort of draw that balance between making sure that you're doing things that excite you and that you're passionate about, but that it's something that element of it is universal. It's funny because we have a family friends, and they, for some reason, one of them in particular, it feels like every single detail about every single thing they've done, every person in their sphere wants to know about. And it's sort of like you can give us the cliff notes. We don't really need like then what color the berries were on the plate of the thing that you were eating, and then what it tasted like, each and every individual, and that's like one millionth of the story. You're like, we can land the plane now.
Yes, I have
Uh,
those family members as well.
yeah. So, but that's very funny for sure. So, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I do think really narrowing your audience and understanding who you're writing to. One of the challenges I've seen entrepreneurs make, because I actually coach a lot of entrepreneurs, and one of the things that always fascinates me is people are in a business, and sometimes they're already successful and they've been selling for a long time, but typically they haven't had to do it in a way where they had to go out and cold market to an audience, right? So they've had referrals or whatever else. And so I don't know how well they even know their own market or their own audience. But one of the interesting things to me is if you start asking them about who their customer is, who their avatar is, they have a really hard time with it. Are there things that we can do to sort of get some clarity around that? Because obviously, if you're writing copy or you're doing something and you have that person in mind, that it's going to be a lot easier to create that in a way that's compelling for them.
Yeah, so to that exact point, I usually will try to like actually envision one of my clients, like one of my favorite clients. I don't want the people that were not enjoyable to work with, right? And I actually keep a pretty stringent tracking system with my clients. So I will track like what I did. I will track their name, what I did for them, what the like cost was, how many dollars per hour I made on the project, and then I will put notes, how I got referred to them, and then I will put notes by their name. So it might be like personality stuff, how easy, how responsive they were, how easy they were to work with, what the challenge was, anything that I note. So I by the end of the year, I have a pretty long spreadsheet of attributes that my ideal client is, but I will pick a person specifically off that list and like write or create for them. So, I will do it often in my podcast. I will say like, "Hey, Christy," I will reference the person because I know that they're listening, and then they feel very seen and heard. Now, the information that I may be sharing to this person is probably also something that somebody else who is my ideal client is feeling as well. But you can see how, again, like making them specifically feel seen and heard goes a long, long way and keeps them engaged and listening and like, oh, what's she going to say next? Are they going to mention me again? Right. So I know that like that's an easy thing to do if you already are in working with a lot of clients, then you can start tracking and keeping notes on their personality details and things like that, things, red flags, green flags, all of that. If you're not working with anybody yet, I would say you have to start getting out there and working with people to figure out what you do and don't like. Like, it took me kissing a lot of frogs to realize that these are clients I do like and these are clients that I don't like. And these are the things I can literally get on a discovery call with somebody and say, no, that's not going to work out. Like, I can kind of already tell by the way they're pushing
Mhm.
me or whatever is happening that this is not going to be a good fit. So, or maybe they have a need that is like way, I can't deliver on that expectation. So, but I'll give you some like real fun things we can do with our content and with our copy, and just ways you can kind of bring it in more to your business in the everyday life. Some of it is just when you are on those discovery calls with people, asking them questions like, even as small as, where do you live? What's the name of your dog? Like, if you see something fun in their background, you ask them a question about that. Are curious about people are very likely to reciprocate when you are curious about them. Like, people very much enjoy talking about themselves. So that's a really easy one. You can do it in your emails, you can do it in your social posts. You can create those, like, I see people do well, I do them too, but like stories on Instagram with like a poll. People love contributing to polls. They love being part of your decision making process. So, like, if you're comparing two logos or two graphics, people love like voting on which one they like better or which music for the intro of your podcast. So, like, really bringing people in with questions and invitations to participate, that goes a long, long way in your marketing, throughout your marketing. Remember that you are literally creating like a community with what you're doing, right? You're not like pushing, like, we don't want to be pushing things at them. We want to kind of be like inviting them in. So just like pulling, but not in a, like, an aggressive way. um, the other thing that I find is really good for sparking curiosity is when we share our opinion on things or our personal thoughts on things. So, I said don't talk all about yourself, but people actually do want to know your thoughts and perspectives and your personality. Every time I think like, oh, I should not say this on my podcast, I will say it. And then I will get all these messages that are like, oh my God, I love that you just said that. So remember that. And you don't have to, I see all of these posts that are like, unpopular opinion alert. You don't need to call it an unpopular opinion. You can just express your idea or your opinion without drawing attention to it. But it really is fascinating to see like how much engagement that creates. People love it because chances are they're either thinking the same thing or they have a different opinion, and it's like just so conversational when you can bring it in that way. And lastly, I'll just say as a don't, well, another do is to use like facts and information that is like a little bit surprising. So, one that I love is, did you know that 90% of people forget what they heard within like a week of hearing it? That's fascinating. And I'm like, wow, tell me more. And what can I do to make that not happen? Right. So, that's like a way to kind of create some curiosity, is use like a surprising bit of information. And one thing I will say is not sparking curiosity, and I see this a lot, is like trying to create these hooks or using a lot of emojis or things that are all caps. Like, those are not, capital letters do not equal curiosity. They equal you're shouting at me. So those are kind of like my quick do's and don'ts, and ways you can just start having fun with it right away.
Yeah, and I think that the fun element is super important. It's easy to get wrapped up in the mechanics of what we're trying to do, and I think at the end of the day, like you said, one of the things I'll tell you, as my own personal true confession, when I was starting my podcast, one of the things that actually held me up was I was thinking to myself, well, I'm going to do a podcast for entrepreneurs. I've been doing this for 20 years, and so I have a lot of information and a lot of experience. At the same time, I'm not the most successful entrepreneur that ever lived, and I don't know more than everybody else. So thinking to myself, how am I going to do this if I'm supposed to be sharing? And then what happened was I just realized it isn't about having all the answers, it's about sharing the journey. It's
Mhm.
about that vulnerability. And because I'm a relatively private person, that was something that for me was sort of a barrier that I had to mentally just sort of make that shift. And then once I realized it's okay to admit things you did that didn't work, it's okay to be honest about the failures you had. In fact, that's what bonds people to you, because they recognize that you're more like them than they thought.
Yeah.
If you are perfect in everything you do and you have all the answers to everything, you're unattainable. What you're trying to do or what you're trying to share doesn't seem realistic, and it's quite frankly not. But also for people, I just don't think you're as accessible. Whereas if you are able to open up about things that you tried that maybe didn't work out, or whatever else, or the struggles or the loneliness. I mean, one of the things I recognized is, you know, and it's funny because it still goes back to the whole entrepreneurial journey and all these disparate things that don't seem to have anything in common, yet there are lessons that you take from each one. And that is, in the brick and mortar, the positive of that is it was social. There were seven of us in an office. We were answering phones. We were like going out to lunch, like doing these things, right? So there were benefits to it. When you're doing digital entrepreneurship, it's great because we have all this connectivity and we can sit in our bedroom or our attic or whatever else and build an entire business and all. But it's also very isolating. In the industry that I was in software for a long time, and we did things through the affiliate model. And so a lot of my colleagues, I would talk to online a lot, but we'd only see each other once, twice a year at an event or something. And so one of the things that I realized is in those downtimes, especially when you're crushing it, that's okay. You can live with the loneliness because you're doing really well. But with every business, there are ups and downs. And when there are downs, it's very hard to brook that when you're completely alone. You start to
Yeah.
feel like, why, am I the only one struggling? So I wanted to give a voice to everybody, and I wanted to tell them, keep encouraging them to keep going, even if you feel like you're alone or you're struggling or whatever, because we've all been there. We all go through that. And if you pull back the curtain on anybody who's successful, likely you will find a lot of lumps they took along the way. Very few people, nobody really that I know, started something and the lights were all green from day one and everything was perfect and they shot right to the top and that was it. Most of the time, even if they had a glimpse of that, they still then had some sort of downturn or problem that then they had to rebound from and things like that. And so, um, sharing those experiences that make us human, that we all have in common, I think is super valuable and super important. So, to that point, 100%. So, what about content ideas, right? So we've got sort of frameworks here, but let's say one of the challenges that people have is, okay, I know that in order to be relevant, I got to keep putting out new content all the time. How do I not run out of ideas or just keep rehashing stuff?
Well, you can keep rehashing a lot of stuff. I always like to remind people that repetition is not repeating yourself. It is actually bringing cohesion to your marketing. So, like, I mean, realistically, I have like four things that I talk about on a regular basis, and I just kind of keep repeating those in different ways, using different stories, using different client examples. So, here's what I kind of like would start you doing. I would say sit down and think of your 4 or 5 like main things that you could talk about literally in your sleep. So for me, it's like collaboration, curiosity marketing, copywriting, podcasting, podcast guesting. Okay. So those are like my core things. Maybe networking I'll throw in there too. And then I could take those things, sit down and make a list of like hundreds. And I know everybody can do this. So I'm not like just saying I'm something special here where I have all these examples, hundreds of examples of client stories and actual experiences and tips and how to's and like resources under each and every single one of those topics. So if you are, and let me also give a little plug. I don't love tons of chat GPT or AI content, but it can help you ideate new things. So like, for example, today I had this idea for a post and I was like, all right, how would I make this apply to business ownership? So I kind of like asked ChatGPT, can you give me some ideas? Now, I haven't done anything with that yet. It's just still kind of like percolating up there, but it can help you say, how can I tie this story from my childhood? How can I tie my dog walking service to what I'm doing now? How can I take this example of being stuck in traffic on 95 South for 5 hours and turn it into a business application? So I like using chat actually sometimes for those kinds of things, because the truth is we all have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of stories and ideas. And realistically, they're just recycled ideas that either somebody else has shared before us or we've shared before, and that is totally a-okay. I kind of group things into so I'll take those categories. Those are like my topic areas, but I kind of group things into like educational posts, which I use sparingly because we're all over educated and like we've gotten tips to beat the band. Educational posts, personal posts, which are just things like going on, like if you have an animal, you might share your pet, or some people like to share about their kids or vacations that they're taking, like whatever you're doing that's just fun in your books that you like to read, that kind of thing. And then promotional stuff, which is that direct marketing. Like here, I have 6 client openings in October, get your spot. And then the last one, oh gosh, I can't believe I'm forgetting my own 4. This is fun. So we're just going to say that I don't remember today, but there is a 4th one. Inspirational. Oh my gosh. Thank you, brain.
There you go.
Yes, inspirational posts, when you're just like giving people something to look forward to, right? Like you're sharing an inspirational idea or motivational. For you, it might be like a hack, like a kind of like, this is how I start my day, and this is something that you can start your day, or a positive word, something that's just feel good for the people that you specifically are talking to. So if you take the combo of those topic ideas you have and then putting them into those categories, like I don't think you'll ever run out of content, as long as you're okay with the fact that you will repeat yourself sometimes. And that is totally a-okay. You can tell the same story again and you can use a different photo. You can tell the same story again and you can use the same photo. The chances are really, really high that people did not see it the first time. The chances are really, really high that they didn't read every single word the first time or hear it when you said it on your podcast. And here's the other thing: people move through their life and develop and grow. And so sometimes they weren't ready to see it that first time that you shared it. And then 2 years later, you say it, and they're like, oh my gosh, that landed with me. And you're like, yeah, I've been saying that for like the past 5 years. But it's like the first time they've ever heard it. I just saw somebody the other day who had that experience with the quote, expectations are premeditated resentment. And I was like, yeah, I have heard that since I was like 10 years old. But this person, it was the first time they ever heard it. And it like was just like an epiphany. So think about that. Not everybody is at the same place when they're reading your stuff.
Yeah, I think it's a powerful idea because it's easy for us, because we know the material, to feel as though our audience already knows it too. But in some ways, it's almost egocentric, because the reality of it is most people are not going to remember. You can say the same thing over and over. I've told the same stories to people I know I've told them to before, and had them not recognize they've ever heard it. So because I could tell, right? If they had heard the story before, I would have just not told it or transitioned out. But they'll ask me this, or they'll ask me the same question 3 or 4 or 5 times over the course of time. And you're like, okay, I'm not offended by it. I just recognize the fact that maybe you weren't ready, maybe you were preoccupied, maybe you just didn't listen, or you ignored what I said. But at some point, if you keep telling the same story, and in fact, somebody was saying years ago, I heard this about sort of an origin story for a brand, and they said you have to keep telling the story to the point you're sick of the story. You
Yeah.
think everybody knows it, but every person that's hearing it for the first time, it's brand new. Every person who's hearing it for the first time that they're actually listening or paying attention, it's brand new. And to your point, the repetition, even if they've heard it before, matters. They have to hear it over and over and over again. That's how you build it. Look, McDonald's doesn't need to run ads to let people know that McDonald's exists.
Right.
Everybody knows McDonald's exists, but they keep running ads because they want to stay in your mind. They want to make sure that when you're hungry and you're in a rush, that's the thing that you think of. You're going to pull into the drive-through, right? Coca-Cola, same thing. It's not like people don't know these companies exist or the products are out there, but yet they keep doing it and they keep running the same ads. Why? Because it works. If it didn't work, they wouldn't do it. And nobody's going to just, oh, I've got, an extra 25, $30 million to blow. Where can I spend it? Oh, I think I'll run some ads. They're doing it because there's an ROI on that, right? And so, yeah, I think that those are really, really powerful and important points and very easy to overlook. So, what are some ways outside of social media if we want to market ourselves? I mean, obviously, we've talked a lot about the internal digital marketing thing, but are there things outside of that we can do as well?
Yeah, okay, I'll give you like my favorite 3. So my first one is one that we're doing right now, and that is doing a podcast. And it doesn't have to be podcasting, it could be speaking on a stage, but anything where you are getting to connect with a person like on a face-to-face, one-to-one level, and it's maybe somebody you wouldn't have had the opportunity to do with otherwise. So, I absolutely love that. I would put that in the bucket of collaborations, but I actually think I'm going to expand collaborations a little bit bigger and also include in collaborations working with people in similar industries to you but that don't offer the same things. So for example, I'll use a copywriter as an example. So I'm a website copywriter. I write the words that go on the website and I don't design the websites. And a lot of people don't get that. They're like, "Wait, what? I have to find somebody to design the website?" So I work very closely with website designers and they keep me very, very busy and vice versa because we're always able to like cross pollinate, I guess. However, there's more to it than that. Like we are also building off of each other's networks and referrals. So I'm introducing them to new people, they're introducing me to new people, and it just keeps on going and going and going and going. So that's my favorite way to quote unquote market myself because I'm having like actual conversations with actual people and I get to learn about them while I'm also helping them. So like just like you and I are doing right now, it's like we're learning about each other, we're helping the person on the other side, and it's like a win-win. It's a triple win. So I absolutely love that. And then the other one I would say, and this was hard for me, was just being open to meeting people and recognizing that like yes, you wear all the hats and you have different roles in your life. You know, you're the auntie and the uncle in some places, and the mom or dad or wife or sister in other places, and the business owner and the community leader. And you're also the same person everywhere that you go. So, like, don't discount the conversation that you have in the grocery store. Don't discount having a conversation with another parent at the daycare pickup line, because that is all part of building your business and yourself. And I just like, I can't even tell you how many conversations randomly in a store that have led to someone introducing me to somebody else or becoming a podcast listener or whatever the case may be. When I didn't even intend, I'm like, I just came here to buy chocolate and cheese.
Yeah, that's true. You just never know where relationships are going to start, and you never know how things are going to materialize out of that. It's fascinating. I mean, if you think about it from a relationship standpoint, we all know somebody who met their spouse or significant other or whatever in some weird place, at the laundromat or in the grocery store, at the movies, or there are traditional ways, but same thing can apply to business. There are business partnerships, there are various other things that can happen. I actually years ago was working on some things, and a guy had messaged me, and he was in my industry, but we didn't really know each other that well, and he had recognized some of the stuff I was doing as a strength that he struggled with, but he recognized some of the weaknesses in what I was doing, and it was something that he was good with. So he had sort of keyed on that, and he said, "Hey, are you going to this event that's coming up?" And I said, "Well, I don't really know." He's like, "Why don't you go? You know what I mean? Let's talk." So we did. It ended up starting like a 4 or 5 year partnership. We worked together for 4 or 5 years. doing things jointly. We had a lot of success with it. And so it was literally all just based on one little conversation that then took us both in a completely different direction than we were going in at the time. So you never know. And I think it's important to always keep an open mind and always be sort of aware of the potential opportunity for no matter what you're doing. So I love that idea and concept in general. So one of the challenges I know, and this is something a personal regret of mine, is that I didn't over the lot of those years spend enough time building relationships. I spent a lot of time doing, right? I thought that the answer to be successful in business was put my head down and just grind stuff out because I had so many things I wanted to get done. And so I had some relationships, but I didn't nurture them the way that I should have. And then once I sort of reflected, what I realized was there were a lot of problems that I ran into that I had answers right at my fingertips in the form of other people that already had the solutions. And I didn't have that because I didn't prioritize that, right? And so if I had to do it all over again, I would have focused much more on the connections and the relationships. So how as business owners or entrepreneurs can we create more connection in our businesses?
That's a great question. And I guess my answer would be to, well, first, like leave your house and be open to going new places and getting together with people. I personally am a big fan still of the in-person coffee chat and just saying like, hey, you want to get a cup of coffee? You know what I like even better than coffee is taking a walk together, because when you are moving, there is like this way, it just like takes away all the weirdness of having like a quote unquote business chat. And it also allows you to be active while you're doing it. So if you're able, obviously, to take a walk, I think that some sort of movement together is great. Of course, there's organizations we can join, like to meet new people and then start. Don't like so when I go to a networking event, for example, I'm not like I want to meet as many people as I possibly can. I will go with the goal of like meeting one person that I want to follow up with afterwards and do that coffee chat or that walk with. So that's kind of like my goal in that. And then as far as like being consistent with doing it, it's really like, I mean, I track it like I'm like how many conversations did I have this month? So did I have at least 5? That's kind of like for me the bare minimum. And out of those, which ones am I going to be doing again next month? Sometimes you have a chat with somebody and you're like, I will probably never talk to that person again. That is okay. You don't have to like be best friends with every single person that you interact with. But I do think that if you track it, you can get better at it and you can improve it. So I would set a goal for yourself. Like I would like to have 5 conversations this month with other business owners and no agenda, right? I'm not trying to sell myself to them. Um, I'm just having a conversation with those other 5 business owners. Track it and then watch as you like take steps towards it. Maybe you ask everybody at the end of the call with them, do you have anybody else that you are a big fan of or that you connect with in the business world that you think I should meet? So you can kind of keep that chain going that way first, like a chain letter when we were back in the 90s.
That's right.
So yeah, so those are my ideas because I'm like a ambivert. I'm not like a wildly extroverted person, and I do actually have to put it in my calendar and make myself make those connections, or else I too will just kind of like, okay, I can lock myself in my office and never see the light of day.
Yeah, I can relate for sure. So, all right, yeah, look, I think that that's great advice. I think if you have either a written goal about it or you set out with the intention. I remember the very first conference I went to where I went with a specific goal in mind, and I was also the guy that I would sit in sort of the audience, but the action was really happening in the back of the room and out in the lobby because that's where everybody was sort of talking. They weren't listening to the speaker, not out of disrespect, but they were there for that opportunity to network. And so I went to one and I said, I don't care anybody that I recognize from my industry, I'm going to go and meet them. And I don't even care initially what comes out of it. All I'm trying to do is get myself out of my comfort zone to make sure that I meet people and start connecting. And I did that. And afterward, I don't know specifically, it wasn't like some amazing story that I have about all of these changes that happened, but it just changed me because I recognized that when I started actually talking with people and doing that kind of thing, um, you know, people don't know you the way you know yourself until you give them an opportunity to do that. And so once we started to do that, started to connect, that then became more natural. So I started to go to these events and I started to do it over and over again. And I didn't have to think about it consciously or force myself to do it. I found ways into, the group at happy hour. I found my ways into the dinners and stuff. So that way I was able to connect with other people and build that. And I think that that's super important. Even if you're an introvert, if you make a point to do it, you'll get better and better at it like any other skill. And then it becomes more natural and a little bit less awkward. And so you just need that little bit of success to make you feel good about it. So, all right. So, where can people find you, find your products, find your services, and connect with you?
Thank you. Thanks for the great conversation and the opportunity to share that. So I say go to my website emilyaborn.com, and that way wherever you like to connect, you can kind of hang out with me there. I also have a podcast, so it is an easy jump over to mine. It's called Small Business Casual, and since you can just use the exact same app you're listening to Brett's podcast on and listen to mine over there too if you want to stay connected. Thank you again so much, Brett. This was lovely.
Yeah, of course. And I'm not going to let you off that easy. I got one
Uh
last
oh.
question that I want to know your answer to. That's what's your number one tip for success as a business owner or an entrepreneur?
It's honestly get out there and meet people and make connections. We are not islands. We are not building this alone. And so it really does take a village. And so go find and build yours.
Awesome. That's great advice. Appreciate that. Thanks again, Emily, for sharing all your insights and great tips with us. Visit her website, emilyaborn.com, to connect with her on social media, listen to her podcast, join her newsletter, and get a ton of free resources. Thanks for tuning in. And as always, remember, no matter what you want for your business and your life, don't compromise, optimize.